History is written by the victors, is a popular saying, and one might say it's how white people have been depicted in South Africa's past. Well, now Professor Thulas Simpson's new book places all South Africans in true historical context. The history of South Africa from 1902 to 2021 traces a post-Boer War landscape right through to the July 2021 unrest. Well, some historical gaps are even filled with the release of new documents. We have the author on the line to discuss this now with us from Pretoria. Mr. Simpson, thank you so much for your time. I think it's probably one of the first times that our history has been properly written by a black South African. How important is this, considering that we don't have the point of view of black South Africans in our history books, especially at school level?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, Annika. The book is building on the work of a lot of my peers, so I wouldn't want to downplay the role of my peers and the kind of research which is being conducted by historians. I've also conducted a lot of the research myself on these new aspects of South African history which help to illuminate the present. And so that collective work, what I view this book being achieving in part, is bringing that work from academia into the public realm and to provide a new synthesis of South African history for the general public.
I think, Mr. Simpson, what I meant to say is it Prof Simpson?
Yes, it is now.
I'm downgrading you, okay?
Yeah,
Professor, I suppose what I meant to say was for the first time, black South Africans in history books are central to the story and not confined to the margins.
In terms of a general synthesis, yes, and that builds on the work which a lot of peers have been conducting, and I wanted to integrate that without downplaying the white contribution. So there's aspects of white South African history, such as the involvements in the First World War, Delville Wood, which conventionally do not receive highlighting in many histories, which are incorporated in this one. But if we're going to do a history until 2021, we've got to explain the origins of the traditions which are now dominant, and those are the traditions of black politics. So it stands to reason it's not necessarily something that you have to stretch yourself or contort the evidence in order to do. These are the central themes of the South Africa that we know, and which people wanting to read the book will be looking to find out more about.
Professor, how do you actually do research when much of the archival matter has been written by white colonists?
There's a lot of material which hasn't been conducted by white colonists. I mean, my previous book on Umkhonto weSizwe was basically working with archives that have been declassified post-1994, which relate obviously to the national liberation movement, the ANC's armed struggle. And that research convinced me that there was a huge amount of material available and out there which could provide the basis for a new treatment of South African history.
I suppose a question that I've often thought about is there ever a true depiction of history? Because truth is really a subjective issue, isn't it?
Yeah, the relationship between the past and the present is always changing. So the relationship, to use a technical term, between what we historians call antiquarian and living history is changing. And I want to bring that down to earth, and I think I'll need to. What I mean by that is that if you look at most of the general histories of the 20th century, they focus on social and economic themes, labor relations, domination. The Spanish flu obviously would not receive, well, it did not receive detailed coverage in most of those histories. But from the context of when I was writing the book, 2020, 2021, moving into the writing up stage, it's obviously a very important parallel to the moment that we're going through. So in the same way as you know, as a reporter, the news is always changing. The history, to a certain extent, you're always looking at different precursors and parallels. And so it's always going to be a living, changing tradition. What is relevant to the present will always shift for as long as there are events which shift the headline news in the present.
Last question. Chapter 30 deals with the false dawn, you call it, and that's really President Cyril Ramaphosa's chapter in our democracy. What's your take on it, and are you disappointed?
Well, the last 3 or 4 chapters are basically dealing with the present. So when the subtitle speaks of to the present, we're all dealing with unfolding events. And that involves sometimes putting yourself on the block and making predictions. And my conclusion based on the False Dawn is that in the first year or so of the Ramaphosa presidency, he's taken a series of decisions which have basically handicapped him and have limited his room for maneuver. And it will, with the consequence that the first 5 years of his first 5-year presidency, and obviously it's not complete yet, so I might be wrong, but I don't think so, will unfold in a permanent recessionary environment, which is going to act as a political drag on his supposed reform program.
Tula, I think it's Professor Thulas Simpson. I think it's come out at a really good time. It's a great Christmas gift. And the best thing about it, and Tapfuma will back me up here, is I hate lying by the pool or anywhere on holiday with a trashy book, which is what I'm often reading. And I can actually look fairly academic and intelligent while reading this one.
What do you mean? You look
it looks interesting.
You look intelligent all the time.
Well, I look super intelligent with this book. It looks like a great book, it really does.
And much needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, great interview. Thanks so much, Professor Thulas Simpson.